be an alternative way. So somewhere in everything that I've just shared, I think those are the things that really I would walk 1,000 miles if I knew that I could really, touch the life of one young person who is just in a state of absolute darkness and despair.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Bloem, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen.
Okay, good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And as always, I'm delighted with today's guest who will introduce herself. Lucy, please go ahead.
Hi, Maurice. Hi everyone. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here, to be talking with you, and for this to be recorded and for others to hopefully hear. Definitely hear. Um, I'm Lucy Plummer. I'm based in the UK, born and brought up in London. I am a member of Soka Gakkai International, or SGI, and I am the SGI representative on youth engagement at the United Nations. So maybe we'll speak a little bit more on that later, I'm sure.
Yeah, we will. And I'm looking forward to hearing about all you do. And it is the second time that we are talking. The first time that we met was during the Inner Development Goals Summit in Stockholm a couple of months ago now. So I'm delighted that we can continue our conversation. I mean, you mentioned that you're from London. You were born and raised there as well. Can you tell a little bit about your upbringing? Siblings in the city itself or more outside?
Yeah, definitely. Grew up with mom, dad, an older sister, a younger sister, and a younger brother. So
Mhm.
four of us siblings in total. Grew up not right in the center of London, but still within the area of London, which is such a big city. I think it just keeps expanding outwards as well. So, um, but you know, London is such a culturally diverse city that I think that really was when I think about my upbringing, that is what comes to mind. Going to a school that was just so diverse and having friends from you know culturally all over the world, having, going to friends' homes and trying different kinds of foods and, it just the diversity really was such a wonderful aspect of growing up. And that really shaped, um, I think, my life kind of coming out of school, and I didn't have an idea for a job. Like I never like having a career was never something that was at the forefront of my mind. I just wanted to experience the world. Um and so I think that really was my experience of London, just the sheer, diversity, and everyone just, got on,
Mhm.
where we were from. So I think that
And and if you talk about experience the world, was that then you wanted to travel around the world, or what does that mean, or what did it mean at that time?
I think I was just very aware that there was so much more to the world
Mm.
than what was like immediately in my surroundings. And I wanted to really, I have this tendency, I want to challenge my thoughts. I want to really challenge, I'm very curious, and I ask a lot of questions. I don't like to just accept things. I'm always kind of pushing the boundaries in my own head about, what life is like. And so I think I was always really wanting to go to the places where I thought were completely different, to that would just tell me something that I didn't like know or hadn't already experienced yet. So that was my, really real desire to travel. Is I just want to keep broadening my mind and being proven wrong about things and learning new things, and yeah,
Can
that
can
kind
you can you
of.
provide us with an particular experience or a person that where you, as an example of what you were just saying, you're asking questions or push yourself or
Mm, yeah, I remember. So I must have been around 24, and I had, since I finished, I dropped out of sixth form. So in the UK, we have after year 11 or grade 11, we have 12 and 13. Or this was over 15 years ago, but we had like a period of called sixth form. And I did a year of that and was just like, I just want to make money so I can travel. Like that was all. So I just started like working any job that I could find. I'd save up for 6 months and then I would travel. So I had done this for a few years. That was kind of my early 20s. And then I ended up being back in the UK for some time, and I'd completed my university studies in youth work. And then I ended up as a a teacher, I was a non-qualified teacher. I think there was a massive shortage of teachers at that time, so there were agencies that were recruiting for kind of non-qualified teachers and like youth workers and people with experience working with youth. And I did that for about 6 months, and I found it just the most difficult job. And I just understood that why teachers have to qualify to be a teacher. It's not something that, you can just do. And I just, yeah, was in this place again where I was like, I just want to like, yeah, I could see the world more a bit, feeling a bit boxed in. And I thought, where's the one place in the world that I think is just completely different to my experience? And India came into my mind. So I saved up a bit more and booked like a 3-month backpacking trip to India. Um, and in those 3 months, just completely transformed, like, just completely changed something in my mind, and I was just gripped by even the experience of, I remember wanting to, send something home, using the post, and I went to, in the UK, you just go to the post office and you'd go to the counter and get a stamp or whatever, and, off your parcel goes. It was not like the experience was not like that at all. And, like, it took me a good few like, it's not to, I'm not saying it's a bad thing or anything wrong, but just the experience of simple daily things was so different, and it completely pushed me out of, like, my comfort zone. And but what that did was just show different sides of myself that I had not seen before. And I thought, I really thrive. I really love that kind of way of living. Um, so I ended up coming back to the UK and deciding that I will go for 6 months to India and try to find a job within that 6 months. My intention was to go and live there for I don't know how long. And anyway, I ended up going back and I spent 6 months and I found a job in the most remarkable way. And I spent 4 years there, living and working. And then because of the pandemic in 2020, I came back, and then kind of, yeah, life took a different turn. But those 4 years were incredible. I learned so much, particularly about kind of family and community. I have a wonderful family, but we're just very, very independent. And my parents were of the attitude of, as long as you're happy, just do what you want. So there was no kind of like structure or, a certain path you need to follow. And I think that I got to the point in my, mid-20s where it was no longer fun to just, like, not have any direction. Um, and because I had joined this, SGI, the Soka Gakkai International, a few years prior to that, I was connecting with, members of India Soka Gakkai, the Bharat Soka Gakkai, and being part of this, like, kind of family, it was more than a community, it was a family, really was like, yeah, I was, really being challenged to not just make decisions for myself and, I can just go and do what I want, I'll go and travel and just do whatever, but what it feels to be part of, like, a collective and, making decisions that actually, have implications for others as well. I didn't have that kind of like experience. So India taught me so much. And then
Mhm.
I really thought I want to, like, bring that back to the UK, with my own family and kind of friends who I just kind of taken for granted and just been like, oh, I'm going to India. Bye.
That search and that particular experience, um, is that similar to experiences that your siblings went through?
Mm, it's a good question. I've never thought about it. I think definitely my eldest sister. Um, yeah, she liked to travel a lot. My, o- I think, to be honest, more than the travel aspect, for some reason, all of my siblings are like quite religious.
Okay.
Um,
Is
my
that and did that
mm,
come from your parents?
Not really, because my dad doesn't practice
Mm.
any religion and I, wouldn't say he's religious. My mom also the same. She brought us up in the Catholic church. So I remember, we all used to go on a Sunday to church, and that's another one of, my real core childhood memories. On a Sunday morning, that was the thing that we would do, and I was quite young at that time, and my mum wanted me and my older sister, because there's quite a gap between me and my older sister, and then our two younger siblings. So me and my sister grew up very close, and um, my mom wanted us to go to a Catholic school, so we would go to, church to prepare for that. And I just remember not really wanting to go, but I remember there was a little shop opposite the church that sold Spice Girls was massive when I was growing up, and we'd get these. We After church, my mom would promise us that we would be able to get these packets of Spice Girl photos for her. So we'd go just because we would be kind of bribed into going. But I think religion and spirituality really definitely like touched us all in very different ways. Like my two sisters are Christians, I'm a Buddhist, and my brother is exploring. He's become really interested in Sikhism as he's got older, and so it's quite interesting. I don't know where where it comes from, but there must have been some influence on the way that kind of it was a part of our lives growing up.
So how did you then end up, being raised Catholic? How did you end up, you know, being attracted to Buddhism? And
Uh, I mean, think probably similar to a lot of young people,
uh
um, when they become a teenager, and other things just become more important than practicing the religion, and explore different things. I think didn't really I did continue to go to church and into the local youth club attached to the church, but again, like I said, when I went to India, I was just my mind was blown wide open, and I think I got to then see that actually, religion it should be a choice that one decides to make for themselves. And I started to question, I was questioning a lot about the world and beliefs. And yeah, I read a book about Buddhism, and it resonated quite a bit. And I remember I was in Australia at the time. I was around 20, and I was another one of these backpacking trips, and I read a book. And then I remembered I had these memories of one of my best friends from high school. Her mom was Buddhist when I was growing up, and I remember her chanting, and kind of not being brave enough to ask my friend what her mom was doing in the other room, but remembered that. So I said to my friend when I got back to London, like, I've become interested. Can your mom tell me a bit more? And I didn't know, but she was an SGI member, and she brought me to a discussion meeting, which is kind of the main activity that we have in SGI. As part of our peace movement, local members will host a discussion meeting once a month in the house, and would invite guests and other members, and we just discuss different topics from a Buddhist perspective. So she brought me along to one of these meetings, and yeah, that's how I got introduced to Buddhism.
Yeah, maybe this is a good segue to tell the listeners a little bit more about Soka Gakkai International, and then from there, what your specific role is.
Mm. Well, it's a yeah. I think from the highlights from my, own experience of being a member of SGI is, I mean, there's lots, it's the, being brought to my first discussion meeting and people genuinely having an interest in my life. And again, I'm not saying that my family didn't, but they were very kind of, as long as you're happy, do what you want. I never was asked, like, what do you want to do with your life, or what are you doing, or what are you working towards? So that I remember that as a young person really um just gave me a sense of some kind of direction or purpose. And then actually one really key moment in my kind of India journey, which is also very connected to SGI, and my experience of SGI. Um, so there's like a youth group, which are the youth members of SGI, and youth leadership is a very commonplace in the SGI. So there's youth leaders within the youth group, and I remember my youth leader who supported the members where I was living at that time in London. She was from India originally, but was living in the UK. And when I had made my decision to, go to India and for the first time, and I was like, I kind of went with frustration. Like it wasn't oh, I'm gonna go on a happy trip. It was, I'm just so fed up. Like I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm not happy with what what I'm doing right now. So my plan, and it sounds crazy right now, like looking back on it, but I just decided to like sell all of my belongings, and I thought I'm gonna go and live in the Himalayas, in the mountains. I had this idea in my head that that's like, the goal in life, to really, find that's where you find peace. I think, I just was struggling with the confusion. I didn't understand society so much. I thought that would be a safe place for me. So I told this the young woman who was supporting me and others that, I'm going to India. I kind of sold all my things. I've got a flight to Mumbai, then I'm flying to Delhi, and then I'm getting a bus up to the Himalayas, and I'm just gonna have a lovely, lovely life. I don't know how long I have planned to do this for. She didn't say anything to me, but what she did do, unbeknownst to me at the time, was she told um, one of her friends in Mumbai who practices, who's part of the women's division, of what I was doing. I don't know what she said, but when I arrived at Mumbai airport for my stopover, she was waiting for me at the airport. um, and she said to me, she had I think she had a sign with my name. I can't quite remember, but she said to me, I heard you're going to like Himalayas. She said to me, there's a bookshop in New Delhi, a Soka Gakkai bookshop. She said, when you go there, when you go to Delhi, go to the bookshop, and at the back of the bookshop, there's a place where you can like write a letter. Write a letter to Daisaku Ikeda, who's, in SGI, our Buddhist mentor. He's our like spiritual mentor. She said, write to Daisaku Ikeda and tell him what you're doing. I thought that was really odd at the time. I'd heard, this kind of mentor disciple relationship being, a very key part of um, our kind of philosophy in the SGI, but it just was very odd. Anyway, I ended up going to Delhi. I had all this time on my hands and didn't know what to do. So I found this bookshop and I went there. I wrote a letter. I don't know what I said. Like, who knows what I said? But I did that. And then as I was leaving, I noticed this book. It had this gold cover. It was like very shiny and it attracted me. And on the title of the book was Kozun Rufu, My Mission. So Kozun Rufu, I understand it as meaning, advancing world peace or the happiness of humanity based on this, respect for the dignity of life. And so I thought, let me bring this book with me. So I brought this book with me to the mountains. I continued with my plans. But this book really, like, I think the edition of My Mission, that something in that, like through reading this book over time, really seeped into my consciousness. It got in there, that message of, you know, if you choose to accept it, you have this profound mission of, really working to advance the betterment of society. And instead of rejecting it, which is really what I have a tendency to do, is retreat. Um, and it's still a tendency that I have now, but I'm very aware of it, and I know that it's always a challenge. It's always something that I consistently challenge. That instead of retreating, to engage. And I find it very ironic that now I'm kind of the representative of youth engagement, because that was the farthest thing for me as a youth wanting to engage. I would so kind of, I just don't know what's going on. This is all crazy to me. I don't understand. I'm just going to go and live a simple life away from it all. Um, so that was really I would say, the real transformation in my life of, didn't happen overnight. I'm talking like probably 5 years, or I didn't spend 5 years in the mountains. I think I spent 6 months in the mountains and then thought, okay, I can't become happy by myself. Like, it's nice to have like a little holiday now and then, but one cannot find true happiness and peace. For me, it didn't come through just isolating myself, and because it was based on retreat from the world. And then I slowly, like, moved back to the city and found a job and etc. But yeah, I think that engagement and SGI, it's not just a philosophy, it's a practice. So we have many kind of opportunities where youth can take on responsibility for parts of the organization, whether it's an event, a local activity. It's all opportunities for this message of kind of taking responsibility for your life, for your happiness. And then once you kind of have that in your mind, how can you, you know, help others to also awaken to the fact that you don't have to sit and suffer, but there's always something that we can do if we just have that attitude to engage. Um, it took me a long time to learn that, but it's really very profoundly shaped. You know, I'm in my mid-30s now. I would say the last 10 years of my life, that slow reckoning towards, yeah, engaging and not retreating.
Wow, that's an amazing story. Um, maybe I kind of, on the basis of what you just told me, I might know what you will answer, but I'm going to ask you the question anyway. So you know that this podcast grew out of you know, a 100-mile walk that I've been doing since 2012. And during COVID, I was not able to be accompanied on that walk. And so, you know, and that was also a nice part of the walk that sometimes people came out and walked with me for a couple of miles.
Mm.
So I started this virtual walk, this podcast. What would make you walk an extra mile or an extra 100 mile? Even on a day that you're tired or discouraged. What drives you?
I think if I knew that there was someone, a young person particularly, 100 miles away, who was in the depth of despair, who had completely lost hope in life, I would walk 100 miles to go and visit that person and just spend time with them, and, engage and, share my life, ask questions, have a conversation. I think that would be, it breaks my heart that young people see the future so bleak, and it's because it is confusing to live in this society. It goes against everything that is, hum like nature of humanity, of connectedness, and all these, positive, warm things that make us human. Like society is becoming further and further away from that. Particularly, I think with technology. I love technology and what we can do with it, but to to put it before um that human connection, one to one, life inspiring, is is a very dangerous path to walk down. So I think, and I guess if you was to if I was to think about it as like an issue maybe connected to the SDGs, it would be around mental health and well-being. um you know Anxiety is on the rise among young people, particularly around climate change and the future. I think that's why I'm so passionate about youth engagement. Because if I know from my experience, if you just decide to completely shut down, there is no hope. There's not even a chance that things can like be an alternative way. So somewhere in everything that I've just said, I think those are the things that really I would walk 1,000 miles if I knew that I could really, touch the life of one young person who is just in a state of absolute darkness and despair. Mm.
Um, I think, although you were alluding now to a young person, I think within uh, your work, you moved from youth work to more UN work. Is that correct?
Mm.
Global policy.
Ye-
Yeah. Um, and you were also mentioning the SDGs. I have always questions about the SDGs, and you mentioned, the mental health related SDG.
Mm.
Um, so this Sustainable Development Goal 17, um, we are not making that much progress actually in some of the progress that is made, going backwards. So on average, uh, we are at 15 to 17% or something like that. And we only have 4 more years to go, right?
Mm.
2030, we set the goals. So this growing group of people, and you're part of them maybe, um, they came together and they said, one of the reasons that we are not reaching those SDGs is that we did not pay proper attention to the ability, skills, and knowledge that you need as an individual and as a community. So you need to work on, and they set 5 goals: being, thinking, relating, collaborating, and acting. And they identified 25 skills, right? And that's, for instance, where we met each other as well at the Inner Development Goals Summit in Stockholm. Um, People need to work, communities need to work on issues like skills like, compassion, forgiveness, all of that. So my question to you is, yeah, what And I know you're familiar with the IDGs again because we met, but what is your um, opinion about these inner development goals?
Mm.
Um, how did you come across them? And do you, from a Buddhist perspective
Mm.
or from a SGI perspective, do you see resonance or limits in how the IDGs frame inner transformation?
Mm. Yeah. So I I studied sustainable development for my master's about 4 years ago. Um so I was very, immersed in this idea of sustainable development as more kind of external transformations, kind of the material things that we need to work towards to have a better world, which are all important. But I think there was, a layer um, underneath that something was missing. Um, and, particularly from discussing the sustainable development goals with young people. Um, and I started a PhD last year where I'm looking at youth engagement with sustainable development. I'm looking at the way that youth engagement is approached from a policy perspective. Um, and I think, there's a lot of, you need some sort of technical knowledge. Um, you need to, yeah, have some kind of, expertise where you don't have it already, but the more knowledge that you have, you can, contribute. And I thought that 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 puts a barrier already between, particularly I'm thinking of youth, from thinking that they can contribute, um, because it either means, studying or, financial things. There's kind of lots of things that you need to be able to contribute. Whereas what attracted me initially to the IDGs, the inner development goals, is that it shines a light on the individual human being, um, and kind of recognizes that we have qualities that can shape the world and that are influencing the world. Um, and recognizing those things as contributing to the world that we live in is really important. And it might sound very simple, but if we're thinking that more external things, or, we need to develop a technology that will, contribute to, I don't know, advancing quality education, that's, there's an element to it. But what about, you know, the essence of what those things are? And how can, yeah, we our behaviors and our values shape um our society. So I think the IDGs is that bit between kind of the material transformations. It's that inner outer dynamic that I think is overlooked in the SDGs. And it's something that I was very kind of aware of it because in Buddhism, or in SGI, we have, we understand that life in the environment is, like a body and a shadow. So you know our thoughts and our attitudes and our behaviors shape, our environment. We call it the oneness of self and environment. um and that is something that you can test. If you wake up in the morning on the wrong side of the bed, you're having a bad day, you grumble to whoever's in your house, and then you step outside and you I don't know, miss the bus. And you can see it playing out in a very like active way, how your day can just kind of, you're setting yourself up for, one miserable thing after the other to happen. But if you wake up and you catch yourself and you think, actually, I'm gonna really break out of that, mood. So you can see this like on a very like basic level, this understanding that we can really have an impact on our environment playing out. Um, and if you apply that to, things that you want to see change in society, I think the same kind of approach can be made. So yeah, I definitely from my, Buddhist practice, helped me, yeah, get more interest, or just probably seek out something a bit more, and found the IDGs. And what's interesting about the IDGs is that it's not, it's from my understanding, it's not from like a faith or religious perspective. I know, you've been instrumental in bringing that into it, but it's a more secular kind of academic, rigorously scientific, scientifically proven, evidence-based agenda, which I think is very interesting because I think traditionally science and faith, or science and religion, have been seen as, you know, not two opposed ideas. But actually, I think science, I'm not saying science is, proving religion, but there's elements that, in scientific advancements about that's looking at, you know, the nature of life that is, showing up. A lot of things that, religion and faith traditions also recognize. And I think in the ITGs, it's a place where those two worlds can meet and actually be in dialogue in a productive way. Because, from being in policy advocacy from a faith-based organization perspective, it's almost like there's a resistance to, traditional secular policy making, scientific based policy making, to engage with kind of faith based perspective. So you're always kind of like, you know, a bit of outcasts and struggling for ways to get in. But for me, I don't know. I think the IDGs, there's a potential to have a platform for
Mm.
dialogue.
As a kind of a translation tool to help bridge and start dialogue. Can I piggyback on that, on dialogue? I mean, for me, in order to dialogue, you need to connect with people.
Mm.
Um, and what I hope that this podcast is contributing to is connecting people. I'm connecting, we are connected, connecting you with the listeners. I also would like to connect you with the previous guest.
Mm.
And the previous guest has a question for you.
What are you doing to not just get to know, but serve somebody who isn't um, considered part of your group, however you would frame that?
Mm. That's a great question. Um, I think I would say I'm really trying to engage locally. Um, and again, it's, engaging in international affairs, UN affairs. It's very, on this massive scale, that it's very easy to think, to not feel like you're actually doing anything, not actually having like any impact. And, I mentioned previously, the discussion meeting movement, which is really the foundation of SGI's peace movements. It's people coming together, in the community to have dialogue. It's creating a space where anyone can participate. And what's so interesting is, SGI, I would say, yes, you could say SGI is one group, but SGI reflects a diversity of people coming from, different, even religious, cultural backgrounds, who really have faith in, the dignity of life, and, really feel that your respect for the dignity of life should be the thing that, unites everyone. So I would say that really trying to engage in the discussion meeting movement, but also really participate and invite guests and, instead of it's actually helped me to really befriend my neighbors. Um, it's sad that now not so much. I live outside of London now. I live in a smaller city in the Midlands in the UK, which is more kind of like friendly and open. But in London, I didn't know my neighbors. Um, so this discussion meeting movement that, SGI has is an opportunity to really engage and participate in the local community and talk to people that you wouldn't necessarily and invite them into your space. And, that's what I'm focusing on really trying to do that. And it's also very grounding for me, someone who works on such a scale global that it can just be really isolating and lonely. That if you're not, if you don't have those roots where you are, if you don't have a strong connection to family and, friends, then that can really be a lifeline. So I would say supporting and participating in SGIs in the building of this grassroots movement for peace is something that I'm actively trying to do.
Yeah, no, I really like that, and I agree with you in terms of, you know, the 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 lot of polarization that's going on around this world. I mean, uh, I think it's almost like the only way or an important step in to conquer this or to go against this is to start talking with your neighbors again. And I think that has kind of disappeared. So
Mhm.
everybody becomes, it's and then it's so there is there you will see different things going on than on Twitter or on social media
Mm.
because you just don't see your face, the face of your neighbor you see. So even if you have opposing opinions, um, you probably will find something where you do agree, where you can start a dialogue, and that can lead to other things, right? In better understanding, um, and that might influence then choices that your neighbors might make
Mm.
because they have, you have exposed them, including yourself. You're also exposed to different contexts, so there is more understanding. And again, you don't have to agree, but at least you understand why people,
Mm.
vote as they do or express their opinion as they do. And that's already an important step within that work, and especially if you talk about peace, right? Um, so yeah, it's interesting what Gakkai is trying to do, or what you are also doing as a result, maybe of that, or influenced by it. And I really would invite the listeners to check out. And we will mention the website also of Soka Gakkai. Um, Lucy, yeah, your question for the next guest.
Yes, actually, I've written it down. Let me have one of those because, yeah, this one I found a little difficult. I think my question for next guest would be, how are you or could you be contributing to a world that leaves no one behind? And we just to give a context, I don't think we've mentioned it previously, but the SDGs, yes, there are 17 goals around, social, environmental, economic issues. Um, but it's also rooted in this promise to leave no one behind. And for me, that's the most essential element of the SDGs. It's this real commitment to leave no one behind. And for me, that means, what we're talking about is to reach out and engage. Probably someone with the most like I might think has the most hideous viewpoints has thinks that way for a reason, may have had awful experiences and may be really suffering because of something, maybe has an experience that have caused them to be so distrustful or hurt or betrayed, and I don't know. So this effort to like leave no one behind, we need to like see beyond. those very surface level, like, I don't know, things, and just think, how can we, help that person to, how can we bring that person along with whatever, whatever improvement we're trying to make. So my question would be, I'll repeat it. How are you, or how could you be contributing to a world that leaves no one behind?
Yeah, I liked it. Um, while listening to you, I'm going to ask you this. I very often talk about Ernie's ducky, and I think I showed you the duckies in Sweden that I always bring around, and it goes back to a skit of Ernie of Sesame Street, who wants to learn how to play the saxophone, and he's playing the saxophone, but he also likes his ducky. He always carries the ducky around. So when you hear him play, you hear the squeaky sound of the duck, and so then the band leader, the owl, says, Ernie, if you really want to learn how to play the saxophone, you need to put the ducky down. And you know, so it's a metaphor, right, in terms of fears or
Mm.
go-tos, easy go-tos, instead of being open when we are talking and learning, talking with other people. Um, so my question to you is, what is your ducky?
Mm, yeah, I think it is around not trusting others, like that real fear of like being hurt. But what I think what really has helped me, um, you know, with this kind of engaging in dialogue, which has become such a big, you know, thing, part of my kind of daily life. And it's something that I learned from my mentor, Dasaka Ikeda, who I mentioned earlier. Um, so he's spent his, many decades traveling the world, having dialogues with, you know, global leaders in different contexts. And, you know, as a Buddhist also, we believe that, in the potential of every human being. Um, and there was something that President Ikeda says around when he's engaging with dialogue, imagining that everyone has this treasure chest of gold. Um, and sometimes, it's about mining for that gold. Um, really believing that somewhere in that person's life is this treasure, humanity, compassion. We all have it. It's, based on kind of what Buddhism teaches. And, when we're engaging in dialogue, it's this activity of mining for gold. And that has really helped me to kind of get over my own judgments, my own fears, my own anxieties, and that belief in somewhere, you know, in that person is these treasures. And the the challenge for me is to bring out my own whilst, trying to, bring out the others. And the more I can mine in my own for my own treasures, the more I can really, that can be reflected again, this you know, self and environment being one. So it always comes back to myself, and how much more can I open my heart, my life to others. And I've had the opportunity with family members who I found very, very difficult, and judging them and completely changing my attitude towards them. Because I think once, if you see, if you let distance grow between you and someone, then that person can become such a horrible, like, monster. um and when there's no engagement happening, the mind can make up all sorts of things about that person. But once you break through that and engage, especially from a place of just kind of unfettered um, you know, appreciation for that person. That I've had remarkable experiences of that just really changing relationships. So I think mine is really just remembering that I have these treasures in my life. And if I can connect with those and, bring them out, then I can more easily see them in others as well. So, yeah. I don't know if I got the
Yeah.
analogy
No,
right.
no. Yes, yeah, no, no. This is really helpful. It reminds me what you were explaining about, and the listeners know this. It's kind of, I've written that also in, if you see the little snippet about this podcast, is that, you know, acknowledging that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. So if that's the case, then even people out there that you really, find it difficult to talk with, um, you should be able to find, 1% that you might agree on something. And because nobody can be wrong 100% of the time. So if you use that,
Mm,
that's where your connection starts and your dialogue can start, right? So I think that's really powerful and yeah, a lot of wisdom.
mm,
Um, let us talk a little bit about, that rubbing and tension and polarization. Um, what talking about youth, especially because that's a field that you're interested in as well and working on. What worries you most right now, personally or professionally, when you think about young people in the future?
mm.
And then maybe because you don't, I like balance. On the other side, where do you find hope?
Um, yeah, I think what worries me most is the lack of connection. Um, and, I think that it's a real vicious cycle. If you're not having that connection, then it just, the anxiety and can come in, and then, you can have a tendency to pull away even more. And then it just like you go round and round. And I see it, I've got specific people in my mind as I'm saying this, who, yeah, I just see trapped in this cycle of, lack of connection, and then the anxiety growing, and then it becomes harder to reach out and to open and to engage. Um, so I think what worries me most is, there's more research coming to light or being done on, the state of mental health among young people. Um, that worries me the most. And I don't see the trends helping with, you know, more use of technology, AI. You know, it's it's really concerning to, I'm still use Instagram and other Instagram mostly, and it's so hard to see now what is real and what's fake. There are, AI generated videos that, you wouldn't question. Um, and, a lot of young people are just, social media is their kind of go to for many different things. It's also mine. So I really worry that we are losing a sense of connection to ourselves and to others. And the more we go down that route, yeah, the more we suffer. So I think that's something that I, worry about. But what gives me hope is I think young people are really wise, um, actually, and I also see a trend of young people understanding this. um, and you know, questioning things and yeah, maybe turning the tide. And I think it's early to say how this will turn out, but I think that I really see there's a incredible side of young people that don't just accept and are thinking more and are pushing back against this. And particularly, I talk about my own experiences in SGI, all these opportunities that um, the organization focuses on, like youth exchanges. I remember going through Brexit when the UK voted to leave the EU um, a few years back. And so in SGI UK, I have a leadership responsibility. I look after the student group. Um, and we used to have like many European students in the UK that were studying at university. And when Brexit happened, they, the feeling of betrayal among Europeans in the UK was really high, and it was really very heartbreaking. And um, because SGI UK is part of SGI Europe, that never changed. Political changes happen, but SGI UK remained a part of SGI Europe, and we still went to, were invited to the summer youth exchange programs, and UK delegation. We'd go and we'd be, with our European comrades in faith again, and you know, it made us strengthen our commitment to transforming the karma of this continent to, is, last century Europe was the continent where two world wars started. And we come together and we, as people of Europe, of youth of Europe, we determined that we're going to transform tr- this karma that we have into one of peace.
Mhm.
And for me, that time was very, very significant because we saw all of these things happening because of political changes. But the fact that we had these bonds of friendship that were strengthened during those times was really powerful. So for me, it really gives me hope around, youth engagement is so much more than just having a youth, I don't know, come on a panel and speak and share about their experience, or going to the COP and having, being part of a panel to say something. It's really, how can you engage like a young person's life in hope that will inspire them to feel that their life has value and can create value in, these dark times. And I think for me, that's the power of youth engagement. That's, when you really see the value of young people as, the ones who can really transform how society is really the purpose of, or the potential of, youth engagement. Um, and that's why, yeah, I grew up, I became SGI member when I was 20, but I had, almost a decade of being engaged in many opportunities. And now I'm able to kind of foster, the next or, there's, now I'm older, more younger youth. So it's that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. And um, a lot of, I mean, if I ask questions about hope, it's very often related with the younger generation. When I speak with the younger generation, what they say, okay, it's great that, the rest of the population is hopeful, about us. but don't expect us to do all the work, because you got us into trouble. So you need, as long as you're on earth, you need to do your fair
Mm.
bit of work as well. So that's what I've heard, and I've been fortunate to discuss, like with you, with a lot of young people as well, which I find
Mm.
inspiring. Where I find hope is in music, actually. So I come to the most difficult questions for many. Um, so I'm going to ask you, if you, Lucy, had to choose a song or a piece of music that represents for the big part
Mm.
what you are about, who you are. Um, which song or piece of music would that be, and why?
Right. Yeah, I can see why this is the most difficult question. Um, Gosh, I probably share one that I aspire to. Um, I don't necessarily feel it represents fully who I am now, but probably where I would want to be. Um, and that is Ode to Joy. And I was, you know, Beethoven's Ode to Joy. I was reading years ago, I encountered it. Um, it's quite a popular song in SGI. Um, it has some historical um, reasons why that is, but what I found out about the song is that it's really a song of overcoming suffering and this, expression of joy um, through overcoming hardship and struggle, which not an expert on Beethoven whatsoever, but I understand his life was full of challenges. And, it's the way he was able to overcome those challenges was through music and in creating probably one of the most, you know, profound, amazing pieces of music that we have. It was born from a place of real, real suffering. So I think, that's really what I would, aspire for my life to be is to really to experience joy regardless of what's happening, but to have that attitude of life is still to be enjoyed, like no matter what.
Okay, I like that. So I will add that song to a
Mhm.
Spotify playlist that consists now of all the songs that have been selected by my guests. And if you go to Spotify and you search for hashtag Walk Talk Listen, you'll find all those songs. Lucy, these conversations always go fast. Before I thank you for today's conversation, I had maybe two quick questions. One is, I think some listeners are also wondering, you wrote that letter. Did you ever mail it? And did it reach, your 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 guru, your mentor? And what happened? So that's one. And then the second question is there any question that I did not ask you today that I should have asked you?
Mm. I believe regarding the letter, I believe it reached, and I made it a habit to not a habit, but I started to write to Taisaka Ikeda, my mentor, quite often, and I did get responses, and I got encouragement, so I was able, yeah. So Daisuke Ikeda passed away in 2023. So I'm so grateful that, I mean, I can still, get encouragement
Mm.
through everything that has been written. Um, but yeah, I did get a response, not from that initial letter. But I think it was more what it brought out of me.
Mm.
Um,
Sure.
so that,
Understand.
yeah, for the first question. Second question, have you, um, no, I don't think so. I mean, there's so much, this conversation has brought up so much and been so rich that there's so many I happily could sit here and talk more and ask you questions. So um, yeah, I think there's nothing specific that comes to mind. I'm happy with
Right.
our
Great.
conversation.
Then I would like to really thank you for today's conversation, for everything you do, for who you are. All the best, and take good care.
Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.